Good morning, everybody. As usual, I have some disclaimers for the start of my sermon. We talked a little bit about clickbait this morning in Sabbath school as part of the Sabbath school lesson, and I just want to say that I didn't intentionally clickbait with this sermon title, but today I'm talking about a culture of supernatural love. It's Valentine's Day, we've got to talk about love, but it'll be about 10 minutes before I get to the actual love part. We've got to cover a few bases first. The structure of my sermon today comes in three parts. So first, I want to talk to you guys about a little bit of neuroscience. And before I begin, an apology to all the neuroscientists in the room. I'm not going to do it any justice. But I do want to talk about this concept that I found super interesting because I think it relates really quite deeply to how we live in a broken world as humans. We have human brains that we're trying to interpret supernatural power with, and sometimes we fall short, and there are biological and physical reasons why we fall short. The second part of my sermon is about how our culture develops out of that. If our brains are wired this certain way, when we put them all together, what happens? Why do the things that we see in our culture occur? And then I want to ask, what does the Bible say is the solution to that? How are we going to get past our human brains? So let's dive into it. I forgot the other one more disclaimer. I'm going to skip over some stuff in here. If you're interested in any of this stuff, I'll reference the author, but I won't say the whole thing. If you want any of those details, I'm happy to share my sermon notes with you at any time. All right, the neuroscience. Right in the middle-ish of your brain, I won't even try to describe where it is, because like I said, sorry to the neuroscientists in the room, there's a small almond-shaped part of your brain. It's called the amygdala. It has a specific purpose. Its purpose can essentially be boiled down to four different things: fear, anger, anxiety, and disgust, right? The amygdala tells your brain, I'm walking through the grass and someone's told me there's snakes around here. And suddenly I step and something moves in the grass. The part of your brain that fires up is called the amygdala, and it says, jump out of the way of the snake. The amygdala is also involved in a number of other functions. We're going to hand wave over it a little bit. But what I want to pick out of this is that you'll notice that everything that the amygdala does is not about thoughts. The amygdala is not thinking about things, it's just reacting. It sees the snake and you move, then you think, oh no, there was a snake, lucky I moved out of the way. I want to talk about one of the functions of the amygdala, and I've actually given you guys this example before, so maybe it won't hit as good the second time, but the amygdala is, one of its functions is disgust. So if you put a piece of rotten food in your mouth, your brain tells you, spit that out. Before you even know I've put rotten food in your mouth, you've spat it out on the ground. Now, one of the things that triggers that disgust response is, well, let me give you the example first. There's a piece of research that a man did. He had a cup. It was a sterilized cup, and he asked participants to spit in the cup, and then after 10 seconds, he handed the cup back to them and said, can you drink this? And everyone said, absolutely not, no way. I'm not drinking my own spit. But there was only 10 seconds in between when the spit was in their mouth being ingested by their body and when the spit was outside of their body, now something disgusting, right? Think about something else. It's Valentine's Day, so it's apt. You'll kiss your romantic partner and trade saliva with them, and for some reason that's not disgusting, right? So there's something about the difference between something that you consider to be part of yourself and something that you consider to be part of other. And when you accept someone as your romantic partner, when you decide, okay, we're in a union now, you've accepted that person and you've put them inside of your in-group. Right? Now that person is part of what I consider myself, and I'm not disgusted by trading saliva with them or, all the things that our disgust response in our brain is doing are now getting turned off because I'm saying to my amygdala, I'm saying, calm down, there's no danger here. We don't have to react to this. There's no danger, don't worry. There's some quite scary research about disgust. This is John Gottman. He's found that for married couples, they brought them into a room and they had them speak to each other for some predetermined amount of time. And what they were measuring, looking behind the glass, they were waiting to see whether when someone said something during the discussion between the married couple, if someone made a face of disgust. And if someone made a face of disgust while the other person was talking, depending on how important the thing that the person was talking about, they could predict with 94% accuracy whether those couples would get divorced. Right? The presence of disgust in those relationships meant that things were basically already over. There is an idea, and I think these are pretty interchangeable. We talk about having contempt for another person. So to have contempt for another person essentially is to be disgusted by them. I think, hey, look at that person. They are disgusting, and that means that they are below me, and then I treat them with contempt. So we're going to talk a little bit about the effects of what our brain is doing there and how that affects us as humans in the world, as people who are trying to live in a community. How do we deal with these relationships and things that our brain is pulling us towards and away from? So, Dr. Robert Sapolsky, he discussed a couple of studies, but this was where things got really, really scary. You don't have to have thought about a person yet for you to think they're disgusting. Remember what we talked about before with the reflex to get away from the snake, to spit out the rotten food. That reflex occurs in about 0.1 seconds. Turns out the human reaction time to even notice something is about 0.3 seconds. Maybe if you're really fast, you can go a little bit lower than that. But what they found was they showed people images of homeless people and people of different out-groups. So if it was in a certain country, they would show them pictures of people from a different country or any sort of social out-group. And people's amygdalas fired and were disgusted by the image, even though the image was shown for less amount of time than what the person was able to think about the image. That's scary to me. That means there's something inside of me that judges people before I've even decided yet to think about it. How does that manifest when we try to put people together? I'm just going to throw out some cultural ideas. I think if we thought about it for a while, we would find some more cultural ideas than these that occur because of this response between us. My opinion, and this is just my opinion here, I think our world is tending to more and more towards individualism. Just do what's right for you. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing, because they might be doing something that's unclean or impure or disgusting. And if you just worry about yourself, you're not going to have to worry about that. Just You do you, I think, is the modern phrase that encapsulates this idea. I don't need to worry about anybody else. It can be pretty easy to become convinced in ourselves if we push out everyone else and assume that everybody except for us is disgusting. Remember, we talked about contempt. Well, people who treat other people with contempt, they're not very popular, right? To think that everybody else is below you and my ideas are the top of the food chain, it's not going to make you very popular very quick. So, there is a distinction that I want to make because there are things in the world that we want to protect ourselves from. There are bad ideas in our world, and there are things that are disgusting in our world. We're broken by sin, and part of our brain's response to that is to protect ourselves. I think it's quite rare for someone to be able to say, this person has bad ideas without further judgment. The easier response is, this person is bad because of their ideas, or this person is disgusting and worthy of contempt because of their ideas. That's not to say someone can't have wrong ideas, because they can. And we have a responsibility. Jesus says he was the way, the truth, and the life. That means there is a truth. That means there are good ideas and there are bad ideas. But just because a person has a bad idea doesn't mean that they're worthy of contempt, right? Those two things are separate. We'll come back in a second to that concept. The second cultural stream that I want to touch on today is nationalism. So, individualism is about protecting yourself, gathering an in-group of one, and pushing everybody else out. Now, in the 1930s, this was right after the Spanish flu in Germany, right? Adolf Hitler came up with an idea. He said, I want to clean up Germany. I want to make sure that we're clean and pure. And everyone was on board with this idea. And then he came up with a secondary idea that the Nazi Party started to push in propaganda in Germany. This idea was, every time we talk about Jewish people or other people who are out of the out group, we're going to call them parasites. We're going to call them vermin. What sort of images are evoked in your mind when you hear the words parasite and vermin? Those are very, very obviously disgust, right? These people are disgusting, and therefore they are lesser, they are worthy of contempt. You can see how, by listening to our amygdala, we can quickly run down very dangerous traps of in-group and out-group thinking. There was a study done that said, if you put hand sanitizer in polling booths, that when people wash their hands, they will start thinking about this behavioural disgust mechanism. And when they vote at the polling booth, in general, they vote for more closed border policies. Let's not let anybody in. They're part of the out group. We need to keep ourselves clean. All right. That's how our brain works. That's how it manifests in our culture. What does the Bible say about all that? Is that the way our world is supposed to work? My suspicion is that fear, anger, anxiety, and disgust, my suspicion is that they were not necessary in the Garden of Eden. In fact, the Bible makes a very distinct point about pointing out the point in time where Adam and Eve first feared. They felt shame, they felt anxious about meeting with God. Did they need the disgust response? Well, Adam was tasked with walking around the garden and naming all the animals. Were there snakes in the garden? There was also a serpent in a tree that Eve had a conversation with. At any point during that Garden of Eden story, do we hear about Adam and Eve? Oh, there's a snake. I need to be worried. I need to be afraid. I need to be scared. That never happened in God's design. The amygdala, I'm being a bit harsh on it, it serves a purpose. It's there to protect us. But if we live in a world that doesn't need protection because there's no danger, the amygdala calms down. It's actually shown that when you are around acts of loving kindness, your amygdala physically shrinks. You don't need to be afraid and anxious and disgusted because the things that are going on around you are not things that threaten you. You don't need to protect yourself. So, Luke 6 and verse 27 to 28. This is a very famous verse. Luke 6, verse 27 to 28. It says, "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you." Well, that's going to be difficult, right? We just talked about how even before I can consciously think about another person, I've prejudged whether they're disgusting or not and whether they're worthy of my contempt, right? Who are the enemies he's talking about here? That's those people. It's easy enough to just not have contempt for the people around you. If someone else has contempt for you, now we're talking very dangerous territory. I think it's a bit deceiving to assume that because our brain is protecting us from something, that it's doing the right thing. Let me show you some Bible verses that talk about protecting ourselves. So the first one is about, should we protect our ego? If someone is cruel to us, surely we can protect ourselves by showing anger at them so they'll leave us alone. What sort of protection mechanisms should we use? 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 18 says this, "Servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle masters, but also to the unjust masters." Doesn't sound like it. That sounds like submission even to someone who is showing cruelty. What about our money? Should we protect our money? Have you ever had the thought, I probably shouldn't give this person my money? They might need it, but they might also spend it on drugs. You know, is it really worth throwing away my money in that sense? Should we be protective of the things that other people will be wasteful of? Luke 6:35 says, "But love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great, and you'll be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil." Proverbs 19, verse 17. "Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed." That Luke verse says, don't expect anything in return. Lend, not expecting it to come back. And the Lord is kind to the ungrateful and to the evil. Should we protect our life? If someone is threatening our life, should we try to protect ourselves? John 15 and verse 12 to 14 says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you." I think that protection wasn't really part of the plan. Adam and Eve didn't have a need for it because there was nothing out there that could hurt them. But there is stuff out here that can hurt us. So how do we wrestle with that idea? The Bible expects a lot of us. Some of those verses I find incredibly challenging. Is it even possible to live that way? Well, your neuroscience actually says no. It actually says you can't act kindly to others in your own power. Remember our 0.1 second image. You don't even get the opportunity to decide. Your brain has done it for you before you've even considered it. There's no way for a human to remove that. So are we stuck? We can't achieve what the Bible's asking us to achieve. We can display love in a weakened human way, but showing love to those who don't deserve it, or showing love to those who are attacking or hurting us, that's kind of a different kind of love. And this is supernatural love. Romans 12 and verse 1 to 2. Romans 12 and verse 1 to 2 says, "I appeal to you therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." Slight divergence here. The word in this verse, transformed, apparently it is metamorpho. I don't read the original language, but I'm taking their word for it. Metamorpho means a total change in substance. It means you're going to get a new mind, a new brain. What does that new mind look like? Remember our spit example. We can accept a romantic partner and trade saliva without our disgust mechanism moving off. Because we've decided that that person is inside our identity. The gospel is the process of God moving the whole world into our inside identity, with no exceptions. Every person in the world is in the in-group. Galatians 2:20 tells us, well, how do I get myself out of the way? If I need a new mind, I need to get my old mind out of the way. So Galatians 2 and verse 20 says, "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me." When Christ lives in you, the I that needs to protect itself dies. When you look at the person that you find disgusting, the person with the wrong ideas, the unclean person, the person who hurt you, you no longer see someone as an out-group threat. You see someone for whom Christ died the same way that he died for you. We can't achieve the love of Mark 12 or Luke 6 through human effort. We achieve it through surrender. We ask the Holy Spirit to intervene in that 0.1 second window and replace our biological contempt with his supernatural love. Now, Some of you might ask, if I stop being disgusted by people, does that mean I have to accept their ideas? If I tear down the boundaries of my in-group, am I just being soft on the truth? I don't think so. We have a responsibility to the truth. But the world's way of fighting bad ideas is through the amygdala. The world's way of fighting bad ideas is to pick the people that are good and the people that are bad and push away the ones that are bad and accept the ones that are good. I don't think that's the biblical way to deal with bad ideas. The Christian way of fighting bad ideas is through supernatural love. If we surrender to Christ, we get the mind of Christ. We see that there's no them, there's only people made in the image of God for whom Christ died. Blaise Pascal said it like this: make religion attractive, make good men wish it were true, and then show that it is. Worthy of reverence because it really understands human nature. Attractive because it promises true good. Think about that. Our job isn't to prove people wrong when they have bad ideas. Our job is to live with such supernatural love that it moves people from the out-group to the in-group, and then people look at our lives and wish that it was true. This week, pay attention to your disgust response. When you feel that flash of contempt, don't just lean into it. Acknowledge it as a symptom of a broken world and pray this prayer: Lord, I can't love this person, but you can.